This week on FYI, don't shame and bully people like us. In a special report, we hear an appeal from the young people who rely on food banks.
There were a few people who would make comments, "Oh, you can't eat enough, you must be poor."
And we'll be heading almost 2 miles down in the icy waters of Antarctica to check out an unbelievable shipwreck discovery. This is FYI, and as the war in Ukraine continues, millions of people are still fleeing the country to safety.
But millions of Ukrainians are also staying behind to fight the Russian forces. Others are struggling to find a safe route out as cities and towns are being bombed at all times of the day and night. We were sent video diaries from some children that are still in the country.
These children live in Khmelnytsky in central Ukraine, which has escaped intense bombing. They do long-distance online learning in the morning, and the rest of their day is spent volunteering to help the military, making things like camouflage nets.
It's changed my life.
It's changed my life. I feel fear every day, and I'm scared for my parents and friends. And I really want to go to school, see my friends again, go for a walk on the weekends and enjoy my life.
I want to do something useful for my military, so we can win the war. Staying at home and doing nothing, it's boring. And we need to help the military and all the other people.
Meanwhile, Anastasia was forced to stay in a shelter in the city of Kharkiv for 8 days before she managed to travel to a safer city further west in Ukraine.
I was staying in a bomb shelter for 8 days, and that was really crazy. All the time you hear bombs and buildings are getting destroyed near to your bomb shelter, and if you get on the street, you can be just killed, and that's crazy because it's happening in 21st century. But now I'm in Lviv, yes, and I'm safe, and I'm really thankful. I'm staying with my friends right now, and of course I feel kind of guilt of leaving my hometown and moving to Lviv, but now I can be helpful and not stay only in the bomb shelter. We're helping people at the local railway station, and also we help refugees to get to the borders and escape from the country because people are really afraid.
If you don't get why Russia invaded Ukraine and want to know more about how world leaders are trying to end the war, check out our explainer. Just head to our webpage first.news/FYI and click on the I Don't Get It link.
Now, our series of conversations that give us kids a voice on some of the big issues returns to FYI. It's a conversation like no other. It's Kidversation. When we heard that an increasing number of young people are being bullied or made to feel embarrassed for using food banks, we felt it was time for those who use them to have their say.
We always struggled. My mum was working a lot, but she just wasn't earning enough to supply for us all.
There have been times that we've not had as much to eat as what we normally would have, and as I noticed, my parents have been eating.
It was quite difficult to get food, especially as we're in a rural area and quite isolated from supermarkets.
For some people, it's like a stigma of being judged about going to a food bank, and that can put people off. 2.5 million British children live in food poverty. We speak from experience. My local food bank supports my family. We also volunteer here. This is the place where all of the food is actually stored, and the food that's most needed is things such as tinned foods, toilet rolls, basic things that people need every day.
Okay, thank you very much, thank you.
In my family, we didn't really have to ask for help. People would notice that we're struggling because the food banks run by members of the church we went to. But I know for some people it can actually be daunting to go into a food bank because they might not want to say, hey, yeah, we're struggling.
And it's definitely something that people get unnecessary hate, and I think that kind of prevents a lot of people who maybe need it as well from going to the food bank and opening up about it.
I was bullied in school, so I already worried what people would think of me. People did say, "Oh, why aren't you eating anything?" So I was really embarrassed about that.
There were a few people who would make comments, "Oh, you can't eat enough, you must be poor," and they'd tell everyone about it. One of my sisters is 3 and she is currently going through chemotherapy. It costs quite a lot to try and travel back and forth from hospitals. My dad ended up having to stop working, and that's made it quite difficult for us. It became harder to actually get what we'd normally buy. With it being a relatively big family as well, it just became a lot harder. I've noticed times where my parents would have gone without food to make sure that we could eat. And parents shouldn't have to make that decision of whether they're going to eat that night or whether their children are.
Prices of healthy food are much higher than unhealthy and affordable food. If you don't have enough money, it adds a lot of health risks to it.
People are going to go for the options that are cheaper because then they're not spending as much money, but they're still managing to eat.
At school, me and my sister run free school meals. My sister was trying to get the pasta, but because the pasta had vegetables in, she was charged an extra 16p towards the meal. It's not very good that even though you're on free school meals, you still have to pay towards vegetables so you have a healthier diet. When I was in primary school, we didn't get much help at all. I was struggling to eat at school and stuff. My mum was working a lot, but she just wasn't earning enough. So it was a lot of not being able to scrape enough money because of bills and stuff. It's very stressful when you know you can't eat anything, but you're very hungry as well. It's definitely distracting because you're more focused on your stomach than the lesson. I've been told off before for not focusing enough because I was hungry once. We didn't know that free school meals existed, so when my mum did find out about them and she knew that she was able to apply, that definitely helped.
I think the pandemic has shown how volatile jobs are and how important it is to put yourself in someone else's shoes before you say something or write something on the internet.
Before the pandemic, food banks were already heavily relied on. So now that the pandemic has been thrown into it and people are struggling to earn money because of that, it's gotten 10 times worse.
Bye guys. Bye.
I'm from a very big family. There's 9 of us all together, and when we're all together, it does get a bit hectic. During the pandemic, the availability of certain food became a lot more difficult. My dad being on furlough certainly didn't help either. It was quite difficult to get food, especially as we're in a rural area and quite isolated from main stores and supermarkets. I was very lucky that we had a lot of support from people in the community who would help us out if needed. I think we all have a responsibility and a role to play in making sure that no one goes hungry, especially in a country that's one of the 7 richest in the world. The work that food bank's done is incredible and really needed in the community.
They're there when people need help, they're in a crisis and they need help. But it's not a long-term solution. I would probably say to someone in the same situation that I was in, don't worry about the stigma, just get the help that you need, because it's easier to get help than to struggle, and I don't want anyone else to go through that.
And those people who judge you, maybe in a few years' time they might need help. So just don't worry about it. Like Ash said, getting what you need is what matters.
To check out more kidversations on big issues like racism, bullying and being a young carer, head to our webpage, first.news/FYI. So Maya, do you know what this is?
I think it's a film reel, right?
It is. Now everything is done digitally now. These guys, they're recording onto a memory card, but back in the day, this is how they used to record film.
So what happened to the stuff that was recorded onto film? Because of course everything's on computers or uploaded to the cloud, right?
Well, Scarlett is at the British Film Institute National Archive checking it out.
I'm at the BFI's Master Film Store, where some of the oldest and most precious reels of film are kept, to find out how they're preserved and the amazing things they're doing with these films. I'm about to enter a special vault that's kept at -5 degrees. I'm not kidding. And Bryony here is going to show us around. I can already feel the cold. Yeah. So why do the reels of film have to be kept in such cold conditions?
Well, film deteriorates sort of naturally, so we keep it very cold, which just stabilises everything and kills all the bugs, so that it will last for hundreds of years.
So can we see one up close?
Yeah, well, we can go in the vault and see where they live anyway.
Oh my gosh, it's freezing.
Oh. This is where the cans live, in the cold.
And one of them has a really interesting story, right?
It does, it
was
does.
Saved from a shipwreckage in Antarctica over 100 years ago?
Absolutely. They were on an expedition to Antarctica. The ship got trapped in the ice and sank, and the guy who was making the film of the expedition saved it. So this is the actual can of film.
Oh my gosh, it's the real one.
Be very careful, because these are very fragile, because they're 100 years old. So that was in Antarctica 100 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Would you like to see a clip of the film?
That'd be amazing.
OK, let's go.
But it's not just about preserving reels of film. The BFI turns them into digital film on computer drives. This is so historians, TV and film producers can use the footage for new projects, and archived documentaries from long ago can get a whole new generation of viewers. The latest restored film that's been released is South.
So this is the famous explorer, Sir Ernest Shackleton, who went down to Antarctica to try and cross over the whole of the continent of Antarctica. And he went on his ship, the Endurance, with 28 men, and they then got stuck in the ice. They had bad luck.
And did they all survive?
It was an extremely difficult journey, but they did eventually all get back.
So who was it who actually filmed the voyage?
So the guy who films the voyage is a guy called Frank Hurley, and he was employed by the expedition as the official photographer. There has really never been a film that has bettered this about Antarctica. The image is absolutely stunning.
Why is the work of the BFI so important?
Well, if you imagine you could invent a machine that would go back and travel through time, like Doctor Who's TARDIS. I mean, imagine how cool that would be to go 100 years ago and go to Antarctica, and that's what you would be looking at. You know, it's like a window into another time.
Nice one, Scarlett. Now we've got an exciting update. This is Sir Ernest Shackleton's ship, Endurance, and it's just been found nearly 2 miles down after it sank over a century ago.
The search mission was headed up by TV historian Dan Snow, and he sent us this video of how they found the ship.
This is one of the most significant shipwreck finds in recent history. I think it will seize the world's imagination like the finding of the Titanic did back in the day. The day after Endurance sank in November 1915, the captain of Endurance made a sighting using the sextant and a sun, and he gave an estimation of where the ship sank. That proved unbelievably accurate. It was found using side-scan sonar. We've got the world's most advanced underwater vehicles on this ship. People said we couldn't do it. People said the conditions down here were too tough, but we did. The wreck appears to be in one big piece, largely, just as it was last seen before it sank in November 1915. It is so cold down there, and there are no wood-eating microorganisms down there at all. So the wreck it's as if it's been frozen in time, it's been preserved. We are leaving the wreck exactly as we found it. We are not touching it, we're not taking anything from it. The only thing we are taking is data. We're taking a laser scan, that means a model of the wreck can be reproduced to centimetre accuracy. We are using techniques that have never been used at that depth before to bring back the most accurate picture possible of that wreck.
Thanks for that, Dan. Now we're going to end on some positive news about Ukraine.
Yeah, so we think it's amazing to see the warm welcome Ukrainian refugee children are getting as they try to start their new life in other countries.
And we really love this video that went viral of a little boy's first day at his new school in Spain. See you next week.